The unfortunate part about it is everybody wants change now. And I want to be real with everybody. For people have been asking, DMs, text messages, whatever. And I appreciate the interest. Like, they're not firing Kliff Kingsbury tomorrow. They're not firing Vance Joseph tomorrow. Because ultimately, what is that going to do Michael Bidwell with 3 games left? The opportunity to pivot off of one or both of those guys was right before or right after the bye week. Like, you had a chance to move off of one of those people, and you didn't do it. So essentially, you signed off saying this is a Kliff Kingsbury, Vance Joseph ran team for the rest of the season. And honestly, guys, it doesn't matter if they're coaching or not for the rest of the year. They've been eliminated from playoff contention. They're fighting right now, in a lot of fans' eyes, for a top 3 to 5 draft pick that hopefully can come and help this team.
Right.
They're like, wins against Tampa on Christmas Day would only be your second home win in over a calendar year. That's bad. You Atlanta, San Francisco, who may be playing backups in that game. We all want the reaction, not the reactionary, but ripping of the Band-Aid off. We all assume, Bo, that's going to come Monday, January 9th on Black Monday.
Yeah, if it happens. I mean, there's already going to be a ton of turnover with this organization, and you have an owner that's reluctant to change, and an owner that, as far as going outside this organization, it rarely happens. As it's been pointed out several times, I mean, they haven't had anybody externally tabbed as a general manager since 1994. It's crazy. The last 3 guys, Keim, Graves, and was it Ferguson? Yeah, were all guys that were internal hires. So, this is a team, and with what's happened as far as Kyler Murray going down with a serious knee injury, and it's become all routine, getting back to that. So there's confidence there, but it's going to be a waiting game. And then just the state of the roster and the state of the inability to compete week in and week out. This is a perfect opportunity for Michael Bidwell to make real changes to this organization and hit that reset button and really turn things around. Now we have officially, for the 3rd time in 5 seasons, double-digit losses. The Cardinals are 4-10. They went 5-10-1 in Kliff Kingsbury's first season and 3-13 the previous season. That's with rosters built by Steve Keim. This organization consistently is more bad than it is good, and that's nothing that you can look at your face at your own face in the mirror as Michael Bidwell and say, I'm doing everything I can to turn this into a winner, because you're not.
Good question in the chat asking, why do the Broncos still have a pick higher than the Cardinals? Cardinals right now, we're going to get to it here in a little bit, have the 4th pick. The Broncos have the 3rd. The Broncos have the lesser strength of schedule. Now, that could change over the next couple of weeks. There are no tiebreakers for wins and losses in the draft order, but they have the same record. And that allows the Cardinals, very small margin for error. But at the same time, this loss really keeps them alive, Bo Brock, for one of those top picks in the draft. And again, we're not rooting for losses here, but a win against Brett Rippon and Nathaniel Hackett, 2 guys who probably won't be on the Broncos next year, would knock them out of contention for one of these blue chip players, blue chip prospects.
And guys, Frank, Damien, help me out here with two. I mean, Brett Rippon, he was making his 3rd start. This was an offense that was stagnant all season long. It was historically low as far as points per game with Russell Wilson, and they've got their backup quarterback putting up points for the first time. They score over 24 points in a game. And Nathaniel Hackett, who can't outcoach anybody, is outcoaching the Cardinals coach. He's coming out with the dub. Like, what did you guys see that was the difference makers out there?
I mean, it was just pressure. I mean, we talked about that offensive line. I think it was their 10th combination this year. The Arizona Cardinals have played more players than anybody else. I mean, but at that same flip of the coin, we look at, the Chargers who've had injuries, the Broncos who've had injuries and found ways to win. But Johnny and Bo, Frank, I think we talked about it, while watching the game. There's a big difference, Bo, between your 2nd string and your 3rd string.
Yep.
I mean, there's a big difference, because the guy in the 2nd string is going to have the possibility or likelihood of seeing more game time action. And I don't put it on necessarily on Trey McSorley, but it was apparent that he was not on the same page on some of those throws that were made. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whether it was Colt just trying to make a throw. And anytime you have 3 turnovers, short football fields, momentum, you're playing in a, Mile High Stadium, it's cold as shit. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, Frank, you know what we talked about? I mean, when things go bad, it becomes worse with that hawk, on your back during those cold games. So I wouldn't say anybody quit, Bo, Frank, and Johnny.
But
I
think
it's a
talent problem.
But I think it's a talent problem, and I think also it's a depth problem. And when you turn over the football and you're able to run the ball, that being the Broncos, it's a recipe for disaster.
this team right here, man, is just not the combination that we thought we'd see.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been working and flipping and turning and tossing and changing and putting in new guys and with the injuries and all those things. This is just our season.
Yeah.
And it's just not good.
Right.
I mean, and unfortunately, again, it's falling on Kliff when he had an opportunity to have.
It's injuries, Frank.
I mean, what I'm saying.
But that's a narrative.
And coaching.
But that's a narrative now, Johnny. It's injuries.
Well, it's beyond injuries.
Well, no, I'm not going. I think it's coaching.
It's a
that
big
just has to deal with the process.
Yeah, it's a combination of injuries, but personnel whiffs on players, both in free agency and the draft, and coaching. It's an organizational disappointment, catastrophe on and off the field. You can't spin it any other way.
No, you can't.
And we'll also take this into consideration, given all the injuries. When we looked at this preseason, we look at how this team evaluates talent. They kept 5 running backs. We've seen now 2 running backs exit this roster and go from another team to a team after that. They're on their 3rd rosters of the season. So, Eno Benjamin can't stick with the Houston Texans. Jonathan Ward is already on another practice squad. And the team kept 5 running backs on a 1 running back offense. And then they kept the 3rd quarterback, who we saw today, who can't play. Like, these guys that they want to keep and develop around for a reason, they're not developing. When they're getting their numbers called, they're not producing. So it's like, even when as far as who's available, there's just nobody on the roster that, like, the next man up mentality doesn't work when they just can't compete.
Look, when you're looking at when you're looking at San Fran, and you're looking at Purdy, you're looking at the 3rd string quarterback, and what you're looking at him come out and still be effective. What happened and what transition in that process?
Context is everything. I get it.
And so
Context is
right.
everything.
And so you got to look at
they
it.
They got the number 1 defense, and they can run the football. I understand
those things are working. But
it's depth, though, Frank. It's depth.
You look at our defense today. We showed up for the first half. In the second half, we got exploited. Yep. Coaching-wise, we got exploited.
That's because you couldn't do nothing offensively.
The turnovers didn't help us, but I'm saying we got exploited in areas where our weaknesses showed up. Not having the depth, our defensive line, our defense we got ran through. But again, those are the things that you start looking at and saying it is terrible. It's absolutely terrible, and the excuses are going to fall on some coaches' heads. And that is just what has to happen.
Brandon in the chat, Johnny, we tweeted briefly about it, but why should fans believe that an internal GM hire and possibly coaching change is deep enough house cleaning? Well, outside of that, you have to find a new owner. So unless Michael Bidwell is ready to put this thing up on eBay, he's going to be the owner. And I think that, again, I'm not going to sit here with this team being a dumpster fire and blindly support Michael Bidwell, but I think he's a very capable owner, and hopefully he's got enough self-awareness to be objective and say, what I've been doing isn't working. We're going to pivot. And that's the kind of press conference that my counterpart here is going to hopefully sit in on shortly after the season. Like, I take full responsibility. We will get this right. No excuses.
We've heard that before.
Well, yeah. But I mean, by himself, he hasn't had to do that alone in a long time. The last time he had to do that, he had to fire his good friend Rod Graves and Ken Wisenhunt, the Super Bowl head coach that he got, or at least participant in the Super Bowl. So I think you should feel good today knowing that change is coming. What that change looks like, we have no idea. But at least now, based on that article from Jonathan Jones at CBS, you should check it out. Highly recommended, CBS Sports. Michael Bidwell has already been engaging candidates, whether it's the internal or external. So that's telling me, yeah, this season, while it's important for young players to grow and develop, and we want to see growth, blah, 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 I know I am working overtime to get a head start, Bo, on what needs to be done in early January.
These 2 gentlemen to my right and left know the 2 guys who are holding the interim tag down for the Arizona Cardinals. I can say this, and I think fans who are just Cards casuals out there know that there's no way Adrian Wilson's philosophies and ideas and scouting ability are going to be truly influenced, and he's going to have bad habits from Steve Keim.
No, right, yeah. I mean, Adrian and QB and Quentin Harris are both their own individual, but you guys also know, I'm sure that we all have bosses here, and your bosses has an ideology or a philosophy that they believe, right? And that's going to be the narrative of the ship, and that's going to be what it is. But you know, if you ran the ship, there's going to be ways in which you do things. And as Bo said, know them both, played with both of them, know them both intimately well. Q's a very methodical, very X's and O's, very mathematical type, analytical, player. And Adrian is more of the passion, size, guys that are just big, strong, and fast can get out there and make plays.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Adrian doesn't have the years of experience as Q does, but I guarantee you he could identify what a good player looks like. Yeah. And his input will be valued. I think Q being there for a long period of time and has when I've seen him in those environments, doesn't hesitate to speak up, right? Yeah. And everything's going to be very data, factual, support based in his analysis. I think that they're in good hands, especially with Q, because I just know the hard work that he's putting into. But I wonder too about those cultural issues, because I don't necessarily believe that it's Frank, you and I've been around the organization. Mm-hmm. Every owner is going to have an influence. And I know that Jerry Jones gets all the attention and all the notoriety for what he does as an owner, but you better damn expect that 99% of the owners out there that give a shit about their football organization are just as involved as Jerry Jones. Yeah. And that's just where I'll leave it right there.
We always put the onus on Keim, and we never really talk about what Mike is really doing, who Mike is hiring, and who we find. We asked the question last week, did Mike fire Kugler or did Keim fire Kugler? Mm-hmm. And what was that conversation? Right. We don't really know who does the firing and hiring and when and what happens specifically out of the organization. Mike isn't the guy that's taking the shots. It's definitely Keim and Kliff. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I think that we're watching a team that's actually in a great position to make transition. You still got you got talent around you, but they're in a good spot to make some good transition. We just got to believe in the people that they bring in. Yeah, the people they bring in is going to have
or elevate.
I mean,
or elevate.
Yes.
Well, and here's why I think Michael Bidwell may be inclined to think differently than in years prior. When he elevated Steve Keim, the Cardinals were in bad shape on the field. They didn't have this lingering cloud hovering over them where they, number one, couldn't sell out the stadium, that they were inept at home, and then had arrests, embarrassments, disrespect toward women off the field. Like, those weren't prevalent things with the franchise. Mm-hmm. Losing? Absolutely. They were losing with Rod Grays and Kent Wisenhunt. But off the field, they were fairly buttoned up, and they were seen as an organization that was finally starting to take the next step forward. And then, thankfully, getting Bruce Arians allowed them to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think now Michael Bidwell would be naive to believe that even if he loves Adrian Wilson and Quentin Harris, you can't sit there and preach about your culture to anybody else. You're down there in the slums now with Dan Snyder and company based on what public perception is with you. Now, it may not be that extreme, but you're lumped in that group. And the only way to get yourself out of there is to get the right people.
That's a little harsh, though. Dan Snyder, that's a
little
harsh.
Arrests
watch this,
and DUIs. And I get it. Dan Snyder's in his own category, but they're down there now. They're in a place where it's like, do I want to be affiliated with the Cardinals because of what's going on? The people are going to have to ask themselves that. Now, those are serious questions based on what's been going on in the front office, what's been going on with the coaching staff. Those are very difficult conversations that you got to have. I'm not saying that they're irredeemable. Of course they are, but new people are required to clean up this mess, Bo.
Yeah, I mean, they're a couple tiers below. But I liked what you said. And if it's an internal hire or if it's an external hire, you hope to hear culture change, right? Whoever it may be. If it's Q, if it's A-Dub, they sit up at the podium and they say, look, I had a front row seat to this. We need a serious culture change. Yeah. And I think the fan base would love that, right? That would resonate with the fan base. And if it's an external person, I absolutely. And you hope that Michael Bidwell, and, I still am lacking a better term, but this blessing in disguise. The Cardinals have an opportunity now to get to know these two gentlemen, see how they operate on a day-to-day basis, what their views are, what they're about, how they view this, the way out of this mess,
how you fix this problem,
how they fix this problem, how they want to change the future of this Arizona Cardinals organization. And you get a head start on that. They were at the NFL meetings last week, reported by Jones, talking to some other candidates as well. And that's great. You get the head start, just like the Colts got the head start, and a couple of the other organizations that were forced into making moves just by how much of a dumpster fire their respective seasons had gone.
Look, if I'm Q and I'm D, I'm Adrian. This is what I'm looking at, and then this is what I'm taking away from Steve Keim. The guys he signed or we brought in, a lot of those guys we thought were talented players, most of those guys, some of those guys got cut. Before really ever developing these guys or letting them develop, they never really saw their second contract in order to get them in a position where, you look at Chase Edmonds, you look at Christian Kirk, Hassan Reddick, these guys are gone.
Yeah.
And so therefore, but when you look at them in the league, they're valuable in the league. But that's just other names of guys we can name that left here, that was signed here and went some places else. Either they came back or they left. When they left, they went and balled other places. So it wasn't a talent problem. It just was.
Wasn't keeping it.
But
that was kind of the thought process when you played, Frank, that all the talent would leave.
So now we got to follow up. This is when you follow who's making the choices.
Right.
And so when you really start following who makes the choices, Daddy did that. The son's doing that. We're letting go players not seeing their second contract. And so those things become the conversation. But when A-Dub, Adrian Wilson, and Q get with the opportunity they have right now, they have to ask themselves, are you going to let me run this team and grow this team and build this team and build a culture and an attitude where the mentality, A-Dub and Q both are safeties. That's John Lynch. Yeah. John Lynch took the mentality of, hey, if I bring some players in, get some hogs up front, get some guys that can block, and get some. You gave me a couple pieces. I got DN, I got some DN, I brought some linebackers in that can make some plays.
And they're both too defensive.
And right, and they're not heavy on the outside and receivers, so that in itself allows you to have to move your money around a little bit. But I'm saying the mentality of what you watch not play out or has played out, you can really take away and say, hey man, I don't have to repeat the same thing. This wheel does not have to be reinvented. We need to go in another direction, and the way we need to go, we need to be aggressive about it and not start getting rid of our players. Sign the guys, make the money, make these guys feel like a home, and develop a culture of winning here with the mentality that I know I got Johnny, I know I got Bo, I know I got DA, and not watching us turn tables and try to figure this thing out over and over every year.
I hope draft philosophy changes too, because I feel as though in the past they've always drafted best available rather than their need.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In certain positions. And I know that we'll have a draft history of that and everything else, but not addressing certain positions. The team is the team. Steve Keim wasn't in charge of guys getting hurt or guys underperforming. We talked about the team was heavily leveraged offensively. Mm-hmm. That didn't work out.
No, it didn't.
The defense, made some plays when they could, but we expected this team to score 24 to 28 points a game. Yeah, with the offensive unit that they had.
Yeah, and now they're starting Trace McSorley presumably for the next 3 games.